Hello everyone, this is Meenakshi Narula and I welcome you to my channel Mentoring the Mentors, Empowering Educators, Enhancing Education. So my dear educators, in this very video, we are going to talk about what to assess during assessment. Yes, assessment is obviously to assess, but what are we going to assess? We need to plan well in advance before we prepare question papers, before we prepare quizzes or any other way of assessment. First, let us be clear, what are we going to assess? So, my dear educators, as you know, assessment is a comprehensive process. Comprehensive process. Everything comes under that, right? It involves various aspects of students' learning and the development. So, we as teachers must decide what to assess, right? Not only how to assess, right? So depending on the objectives of the curriculums, the desired learning outcomes, the developmental need of the students, this is to be taken care of. So let's talk about a few points that we need to keep in our mind. First of all, product and process. You must be familiar with these two terms. I have been constantly using these terms in many of my videos where I always talk about like give due importance to the process as well, because we keep on focusing only on the product most of the times, right? Isn't it? We talk about the final product, we talk about any kind of artifact that we have asked our students to prepare, any project. We do not focus on the research, the process, the methodology. So that is equally important. Somebody has beautifully said, हंसी तो सफर होता है, मंजिल तो केवल नाम की खूबसूरत होती है. Isn't it? Suffer, that is the process. That is very important. So before you prepare a kind of assessment, you need to think, what are you going to assess? On what parameters? Are you going to assess the product or you are going to assess the product, right? In case you are assessing the product, means you are going to evaluate the quality, the accuracy, the completeness of the end result. For example, if you have given an essay to the students, project to the students, and you are checking the final aspect, the finishing part, right? It means you are focusing on the product. But in case you are focusing on the process, like what kinds of research methodology has been taken by the child, whether the child has conducted survey, research, referred to many books, interviews has been conducted, and even it assesses the problem solving skills, the critical thinking, creativity, and perseverance during the learning process. I mean, now you have to select what are you going to assess, process or the product. For example, in the science project, product assessment would evaluate the final output, final project, while the process would evaluate the research, the experimentation, right? So how the process has been happening, right? So this is required. So you have to check, decide well in advance. Not only about product and process, we will be talking about many other aspects too. For example, are you focusing on the subject knowledge or you are focusing on the application of that knowledge? Means you want your students to understand just the core concepts. For example, you are teaching your students about nutrition, about the process of digestion, right? And you want to just assess how the student has learned or understood the concept related to the subject, or you are going to assess on how the student focuses on the usage of this information in the real world situation, right? How the student uses his or her critical thinking, problem solving, or creativity, right, while using that knowledge that you have provided in the classroom. For example, in the mathematics class, while assessing subject knowledge, right, you would assess only equations, algebraic equations, or any kind of questions you have given to the students. But when you are checking the application, you would see how the mathematical concepts they are used in the real life problems. So this is how you need to decide first, right? And now let's talk about lots and hots. Lots, as you know, it means lower order thinking skills. Hots is higher order thinking skills. As per Bloom's taxonomy, there are 6 levels, right? Starting from remembering, understanding, applying. These 3 are the lower order thinking skills. When we go ahead up, as per on the Bloom's pyramid, is analyzing, evaluating, and creating, which are the higher order thinking skills. Now, as teacher, you need to decide whether you are going to assess the basic comprehension skills of the students, whether you want them just to recall the facts and the concepts that you have taught in the classroom, or you are going to assess the HOTS, higher order thinking skills. I mean, you want to evaluate advanced cognitive process that involves critical thinking, problem solving, creativity. Like all these are the higher order thinking skills. So let's take now the example of literature. Literature obviously can be from English, Hindi, or any kind of your regional language. So while assessing lots, you might involve summarizing a story in your own language, maybe paraphrasing it, while assessing HOTS might involve analyzing the author's intent or creating an alternative ending, tweak the end, change the character also. I mean, here you want your students to use their critical thinking skills and the creativity, and they will be evaluating and even analyzing how the writer, how the author has used his skills about maybe the usage of various we are talking about imagery, metaphors, etc., different parts of speech, how they are being used. So you can talk about that also, right? So basically these points are to be taken care of before you are planning the assessment. Now another aspect is individual efforts and the team efforts. Usually in our classroom we plan different kinds of activities. Somewhere the students individually they participate, and somewhere we let them to exhibit the collaboration, they participate as a team. Now you need to decide whether you want to assess the students personal achievements, skills, and the progress, right? So this approach promotes accountability and self reflection. It has its own importance, but you may also would like to measure the collaborative skills, the communication, the leadership, and ability to work effectively with others. So it recognizes the importance of teamwork in both academic as well as maybe the co-curricular activities, whatever settings you are going to have. So you need to decide first. So accordingly, you will be planning the way of assessment. The methodology you will be deciding like later on, right? First, you need to decide what kind of efforts, what kind of achievements you are going to assess. For example, usually, I also talk about the cooperative learning strategy, right? This is a kind of like where cooperative learning strategy, you check individual child's efforts as well as how the individual is contributing to the team's performance, right? The overall performance is also taken care of. So this point is to be taken care of. Now, you all are familiar with these two terms, formative and summative, right? So whether you are going to have formative assessment means you are going to assess the student's knowledge, not to label the child. It's not an end product, but you are going to provide the feedback to the child. You can have quizzes, class discussions, or with a peer review where you want to monitor the progress. You want to provide the feedback, and also you want to improve the way you are teaching in the class. For that, obviously, you will be going ahead with the formative assessment. Now, if I talk about summative, means you are going to conduct this assessment at the end of the learning period, at the end of the course, at end of the chapter. It's a kind of unit test, half yearly, or maybe the annual examination, where you want to evaluate the overall achievement, like how many learning outcomes have been achieved by the child and even to what extent. For example, the final exams, the research paper, the various standardized tests, they are there. So that's the difference between formative and the summative assessment. So you need to decide what sort of assessment you would like to go ahead with that. Now, there is another point related to assessment, which is convergent and divergent assessment, right? Now, what is the meaning of this convergent and divergent assessment? Convergent assessment focuses on finding a single correct answer to a problem. If I have given a sum to the child, right, and I want the child to come to that conclusion, that answer is to be given, I know what answer I am expecting, right? And the child also knows what is the expectation of the teacher, because why the child teacher has asked this very question. So this approach is very common usually where we talk about facts, where we talk about various definitions and all, where we talk about history, whatever has been happened so far, right? Basically the lower order thinking skills we talk about. And if we talk about divergent assessment, it encourages multiple solutions. It talks about creativity. We talk about higher order thinking skills in literature, in arts, in social studies, where we want the students to come up with various ideas, right? We want them to exhibit their creative skills. For example, even in science, a convergent assessment might involve solving a particular equation, labeling, or balancing the equation that has been given to them. While divergent assessment might involve the brainstorming multiple solutions related to environment, sustainability, right? It can be maybe how we can take care of our health, how digestive system can be improved, right? So such kinds of questions where we would prefer we can even talk about the open-ended questions, right? Where we accept and appreciate the open-ended questions. So what is your way, how you are going to assess whether the convergent or the divergent assessment you want to have? And then another point related is continuous or the end point, right? This we are also we discuss it under the header formative and assessment, summative assessment. Continuous assessment, that is an ongoing assessment throughout the academic year, promoting consistent performance and the long-term learning. We want our students to learn something, to implement something, and then we test, we monitor, and then accordingly we provide the feedback, we scaffold the child so that it improves continuously. It can include portfolios, different class participation in different activities, or it can be some kind of assignments that we give regularly to our students, right? Usually we don't judge the students performance, but rather the objective is to provide them the feedback, to monitor the child, to enhance the child's performance. And if we talk about the end point assessment, it is conducted at the conclusion of the learning period to measure the final achievement. For example, the final annual paper, that the board examinations they are going on nowadays, right? Maybe the half yearly examinations too, where we check the assessment, and there is no scope of improvement thereafter in that particular aspect, or maybe that particular content of the curriculum when we talk about, right? Now again, another point, maybe we ignore many a times, maybe we are not aware of it. What are we going to assess? We are going to assess the deep learning of the child in that particular concept, right? Understanding the underlying concepts, their connections, and promoting critical thinking and even the long-term retention, right? Or we just want to check the surface knowledge of the child, just whether the child has memorized the concepts, the different facts and the information, right, or not. So this is often used to pass the exams, because whatever we learn, we regurgitate, right? This is what is happening in the exams also. The students, they have learned something and they regurgitate. But now you know very well, CBSE has also changed the format of the assessment, where basically we focus on competency based assessments. These kinds of questions, they are there, where I mean, based on Bloom's taxonomy, we move from remembering till creativity, and slowly and gradually the percentage of competency based questions, they are being increased, right? So, and the third point is strategic learning, right? It combines both deep as well as surface learning. The students aiming to achieve high grades by mastering essential concepts and exam techniques. So in history, if we talk about, the deep learning would be analyzing the causes and the effects of the event. They will be able to analyze why this happened, what are the causes, right? What are the effects of that? While surface learning would be just to be involving the memorizing the names and the dates. So our objective is to enhance the competencies of the students. Like knowledge should be there, skills should be there, and the attitude should be there. So this is how the competency is being used. And we will be able to assess the competency through such kinds of questions which are open-ended, because we will be able to get to know the attitude of the child, how the child is using the knowledge, right? How the child is using his or her skills, right? So we need to be very, very clear about what sort of assessment we are going to have. Next, this is holistic and serialist assessment. What's the difference between that? Holistic assessment evaluates the, as the term even suggests itself, overall quality, the coherence of the students' work, focusing on the bigger picture rather than the individual short concept, like how the child is using this information, this knowledge as a bigger picture, right? And if we talk about serialistic assessment, it breaks down the assessment into specific concepts, criteria, steps, with each element evaluated separately, right? We check whether the child has remembered to this extent, how the child is using this in daily life, which area of this particular concept is being used in the daily life. Like let's take an example. In writing an essay, holistic assessment would evaluate the overall argument and coherence, right? We are checking how the child is using his or her knowledge, while serialist assessment would grade individual components such as we're talking about introduction, the body of the paragraph, the conclusion, right? So we focus on each aspect separately, right? This is the difference between holistic and serialist assessment. So this also you need to take care of. Usually, what do we do is we take care of the bigger picture, the holistic. But when you give the letter writing to the students, right, you check about the body, we give the different marks, introduction, the different marks, and even salutations, address is there. Like we divide these marks into different areas, right? So this is how it is being done. And even norms and the criteria referenced assessment, what is this? Is this something new for you? Yeah, it compares the students performance to their peers, ranking them within the group as per norms. What do we do is we just assess the students, and accordingly we check where the child lies, what is his or her performance within a group, in the class, in the school, right? And these various standardized tests where we provide percentage marks, grades, percentile to our students, right? How the child is performing in a group of students, right? And what is the position of the child in the class, in the group, in the state, and obviously in the country. And then criteria reference assessments, it measures the student's performance against predefined learning objectives and the criteria, regardless of how others perform. We just focus on the child's performance. We don't compare one child's performance with the other child, right? So this also you need to take care of. For example, the rubrics, they are there nowadays. Everybody should know how to use the rubrics. And even one of the teacher has requested me to create a video separately on rubrics. And very soon I'll be doing the same too. You all should know how to use the rubrics. And the last but not the least, we should understand like these kinds of points to be taken care of. If I sum it up, effective assessment involves evaluating the combination of the product and the process, knowledge and application, individual and the team efforts, lower order thinking skill as well as a higher order thinking skill. So as teachers, we must carefully choose whether to use formative assessment or to use summative assessment. Are we focusing on convergent or divergent assessment? Whether we should assess the student continuously or only at a certain period, maybe it's a kind of unit test, half yearly, or maybe the annual examination. Additionally, assessment should promote deep learning. We should not only focusing on surface knowledge, but rather we should allow the students to integrate the knowledge holistically, like measuring performance using both norm referenced as well as criteria reference approaches, right? So these are the points that we need to take care of. So my dear educators, stay tuned to Mentoring the Mentors. Keep watching, like, subscribe, and share my channel. Thank you. Have a nice day.